Joined right now by NewsNation political editor Chris Stirewalt. Chris, residents in San Francisco, they've dealt with some of the worst rates of crime, homelessness, drug use. Progressive D.A. Chesa Boudin, as Alex mentioned, is being criticized for not being tough enough on crime. So who is coming up with some answers, some solutions for the Bay Area?
Well, you know, one of the things that people forget about California is a very blue, very liberal state, but it has a tough on crime streak in it. There is a law and order streak in California, and it's always been there. You know, anybody who's been to San Francisco recently knows that it's not working, and the people who live there have been afflicted with these agonies that other cities have not. And this is all on top of an incredibly high cost of living and an incredibly high tax rate. So you can understand the frustration of voters that say we have to do something else.
Well, it's not just voters. Several former staffers who left Boudin's office are actually now backing this recall. I want to read to you something that a former prosecutor said. He has a job as the district attorney to set a tone to let criminals know there is accountability and consequences for their actions. You know, there are a lot of lawmakers right now who are facing criticism that they're not holding criminals accountable. But do you have any predictions for how this recall is going to go in California?
It doesn't look good for him, but who knows? Recall elections are weird, but there's a lot of attention on elections in California. This is, excuse me, this is the biggest prize on the biggest primary day so far, so there is increased interest. That may hurt the district attorney, but his real problem here in the end isn't just that he wasn't tough enough on crime. His real problem is he tried a bunch of experimental programs. He did a bunch of kind of radical seeming things that people are blaming him for, so I think that might tip it against him.
In terms of the flip side, Boudin is saying it's unfair to blame him for San Francisco's problems. He pointed to the effects of the pandemic, lockdowns. I mean, I talked to people who worked in San Francisco during the height of this pandemic, 2020, when everybody was locked up in their homes. People could not leave, and it wasn't safe to do so. I can't even speak to the things that people saw when they walked out of their front door on this show. But will that defense work? Obviously, we were in unprecedented times. Is that going to help him in any way, make a case to stay in office?
Well, he's right. It's not all his fault. There's a lot of factors that are making San Francisco into sort of an unlivable space for a lot of people and why so many people are having to move out. There's a lot of things that are behind that. But his problem is that he did institute new policies and programs, and with the elimination of cash bail and any number of things that even liberal police officers, even as you say, even former staff members say this is too much. So he's putting himself forward as a person who says, I am a victim here too. But the truth is he has had agency, and he has tried a bunch of stuff that doesn't seem to have worked.
In terms of the increase in crime, we're seeing an increase in looting. This isn't just residents complaining about it. This is unprecedented how much crime we've seen. Prior to the smash and grab crimes, we had people walking right into drugstores, like the video we're showing you here, on bicycles, stuffing big garbage bags full of produce or full of items and then leaving. You know, there's something that has to be done, but it doesn't seem like anybody is actually standing up and saying, here's the solution.
I don't know. Look down, just go down the coast, go down to Los Angeles, where they're having a mayor's race between two Democrats who say that they want to get tougher on crime, and they want to do more about homelessness, and they want to do more about safer, cleaner cities. I think we have seen over the past 2 years inside the Democratic Party, coming out of a really understandable, heartfelt desire in the wake of the murder of George Floyd to do more about police brutality, to do more about racial justice as it comes to law enforcement. And all of that was from a good place, but it was the implementation of it was not to the satisfaction of Democratic voters and people of color who found their neighborhoods in tumult in this period. So I think what you have seen is an arc in the Democratic Party where the politicians were trying to meet the voters where they were, missed it, and are now playing catch up.
It's maybe too little too late. I know there's another recall of a DA in Los Angeles, but let's move on to this really interesting topic. What do you make of the January 6th committee creating a primetime hearing? It almost sounds like a docudrama. This is an actual hearing, but they happen to have hired former ABC President James Goldston reportedly to produce this. How will this be received?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you got to carry the message, right? The reason that Democrats need to do something like this, well, there are 2 Republicans on the committee. But the reason the January 6th committee needs to do something like this is to carry the message to not just their own party that's convinced, but also to Republicans, so that Republican voters, they can make their case to Republican voters, so that they can build a consensus around the idea that Joe Biden won fair and square in 2020, and what happened on January 6th was a serious breach of the constitutional order.
It's interesting because depending upon which party you're in and depending upon where you were that day, you might not have seen some of the imagery that they're talking about showing in this primetime hearing. But wow, might be unprecedented to see something like this produced in this manner. Thank you so much, Chris, for being with us. We'll talk to you again soon.
You bet.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.